these 3 sessions to get us practicing contracts and get us familiar with contracts, so that when you have people calling, as you 2 already have experience, you kind of know where to go and what to do. So today we're going to cover listings and the listing contract. Friday's class is, I'm kind of piggybacking this class with the purchase contract Zipforms class that I teach for the Market Center on a monthly basis. And so we're going to go do the purchase contract on Friday, and we're going to follow that class. We're just going to all stay together, and we're going to review our homework from today, and then I'm going to assign you a purchase contract homework, and then we're going to meet again on Monday, not Tuesday, on Monday, right, at 10 o'clock again, to review that homework and go over some final things. And I'm going to assign you one more purchase contract, so that you'll have a chance to practice 2 purchase contracts and 1 listing agreement. Sound good? All right, so the beauty of that is you will feel 1,000 times better when you practice filling in your contracts. The other thing you want to practice is sending them for e-signature. However you choose to do that, whether you've got a DocuSign account, you want to link that to your Zipforms, or you want to use the e-sign in Zipforms, which is what I use. You want to get familiar with it. They've got their little quirks, and you want to be able to do that because we have lots of people who are on the mainland, and we need to arrange for e-signatures, right? Not to mention which your brokers tend to sign purchase contracts and listing agreements with you sending them to us via e-sign. Okay, so we are going to start this morning with I just wanted to share a couple of things with you. So I'm going to hand out this packet, and it's stapled at the bottom. Don't ask me, I must have put it in the printer the wrong way around or something. Sorry about that. And I only stapled it to make it not fall apart. It isn't meant to be stapled in the sense that these items are my lists. So I'm sharing my lists with you. So the first thing is, what do you need to do to prepare for a listing presentation? So I'm just giving you an example of how beneficial it is to have a list that you could literally pull out and go, oh my God, I got to do a listing presentation. What do I have to do? Right? So I'm happy to email these to you. These are Word documents, and you can build on these, make your own, make it pretty, do whatever works for you. But I guarantee you, if you want to provide consistent service, you're going to want to make lists for yourself, right? And it isn't even just about consistent services. It's not like we're doing this every week or every other week. It doesn't happen frequently enough for us to get into the habit until some time has gone by. So in order to facilitate that, I really urge you to consider lists. So this first one is preparing for a listing presentation, right? Do whatever you can to add on to that. But here clearly we're saying is check if it's ever been on the MLS. That's your number 1 thing, because you'll get a lot of information if the property's ever been on the MLS, right? Look up the county tax record, see what you can learn there. You can see how much they've got, what the mortgage is. You can see all sorts of information on the tax record, right, that you can bring to the listing presentation with you. You can see whether there's things that were built and whether there's permits that are needed. So you can ask, obviously, ask more questions of the seller. I think, did we pass out a questionnaire, a seller questionnaire? Have we gone through that? You must have gotten one in Ignite, right? A questionnaire to ask the seller. What are the questions to ask the seller, right? And those questions have a lot to do with who owns the property, and why are you selling, and tell me about the property, right? When did you last renovate it or upgrade it, or what repairs have you done, or what have you done so that you get some sense. Okay, well, in break or at the end of the class, I'll go look for a questionnaire for you and share that with you. It's a really handy thing to carry around because I thought I mentioned it in one of the essentials classes. Let me see if I can find it. The point is that sellers tend to call us And there you are on the phone and you go, oh shit, I know I'm supposed to ask questions. What are those questions, right? So having it in a handy place for yourself is a really important thing to do, more so with the buyer than the buyer, because the buyer, you're going to sit them down and you're going to have your packet and your questionnaire. The seller, like, you want to be able to ask the right questions on the phone. So we'll go over that. Okay. Use a CMA report, right? You might want to get familiar with the CMA report in Paragon. And by the way, it's not hard. Just click on it and do what it says. You just follow it through. There's also a wizard, a setup wizard for it. I've never found it terribly helpful. You need to reset almost in every case. So just go through it and click through it and practice that. I have found that when I use the CMA report out of Paragon, people just are like, wow, this is so nice. As opposed to, you know, just miscellaneous papers. It's kind of packaged together. Next one is determining your price range, right? You're going to have to go into a listing presentation with a price range. So that's what we're going to practice a little bit in our homework assignment. So that'll be great, but that's part of what we do clearly in a listing presentation, right? And then if you wanted to customize your listing presentation, which we do, either the Keller Williams one or whatever you're doing, most of the time we recommend you drive down the driveway, take a picture of the house, and leave, and use a picture for the front cover of your listing presentation to make it look personalized and like, oh, there's my house. So I've recently had 2 listing presentations where when I drove, one was a house in Kahului, and every time I drove by, there were 14 cars out in front, and I could not get a picture. Like, I would have needed a truck and to stand on the top of the truck. I'm like, what am I going to do here? So I went on Google, and Google had this really nice clear picture. There was only 1 car out in front when Google came by and did their street view. So I used the Google picture. And my client, when I go to show him, she goes, oh, you used our Google picture. Isn't that a nice picture of the property? I mean, it was just hysterical. The other one was a property out in Huelo, and their house was way inside their property, and they had a gate. There's no way I'm going to go in there. I had sold them the property, so if I'd gone to my old listing, the house looked nothing like what it looked like when they sold it, so I couldn't use that. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do here? And again, I went to Google and I saw what Google had, and they only had the bird's eye view. Well, the bird's eye view showed the entire property, and because the property and the way they did the landscaping showed it really well, they were fascinated. We spent like 2 minutes on the front page of my listing presentation. They go, oh look, I didn't realize it did this. Oh, this is really cool to see. And they were just, so I'm just sharing that a simple thing like putting a Google picture, you know, the Google picture on your, could be okay, so that your clients, you know, get to see it. So that's just a, you know, and you can see on here, you might want to add to this presentation, what else do you want to remember to do, to prepare for, to include in your listing presentation. The next list is to list a property. Review your pre-listing to-dos with seller, cleaning the yard, work, staging, photography, etc. Schedule the video and the photo shoot. Meet with tenants if applicable. Review the seller's disclosure. Get photos and completed video. Put the listing on the MLS. Add your SRPEDS to the MLS. I love that. When people give me the seller's disclosure with the listing, I can just, if I've got a client who's interested, I can say, oh, they posted the seller's disclosure. Let's take a look at that. So prepare a flyer from eEdge or from Command. Command now has flyers, so cross out eEdge. Place sign at the property. Consider a flyer box. You've seen flyer boxes, right? Where can you get a flyer box? Home Depot, yes, and Lowe's. They all sell all the, even the Ace Hardware on Dairy. Pardon me?
They're like the rainproof ones?
Yeah, they got a little lid.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Prepare a listing book. What is a listing book? This is a listing book. This was a listing book I had for a property, I made a little, I found an index thing somewhere. And I said, here's the seller's disclosure, the tenant information, the drainage easement, the tax record, the neighborhood information, and I made little tabs, and here is my information about the property. And when you have this, when you're doing open house, people will sit down and look at it. People are gonna read this right as they're in the house, like when you're doing an open house, right? They're just gonna look at this. So it's just really helpful to have a listing book. So you're welcome to come and look at that.
Do you give those to the new buyer usually when?
Well, here's what you do. You leave them in the house with your business card. And now they've got this notebook about the property, right? So it's just kind of, yes, you put it in the kitchen drawer. Don't leave it out because the, new agent might take it away, but if you put it in a kitchen drawer somewhere with your business card in it, it's kind of a sneaky way to, yep. Sending an e-blast to all agents, add to your Facebook page, set up Instagram, hold open house and schedule them. Then after a few weeks, get a list of neighbors and send a card that's just listed. You might even do a special open house for the neighborhood, right? Hold regular open houses, consider boosting on Facebook or other advertising, send another e-blast. In other words, you're gonna have to pace yourself, right? You gotta keep going, right? I'm gonna go back a few pages, and there is a thing that looks like this. And this is a way that I like to present my marketing material, because I'm a visual person, and I don't know if you were aware, but more than 50% of people out there are visual learners, right? So chances are, it helps people to see it. So as opposed to seeing a list of what I'm gonna do for them, I like to give them a calendar of what I'm gonna do for them, right? It's just my way. I found it very effective. People literally go, oh my God, you're doing something every day. Yeah, I'm gonna be working for you every day, right? And then if it's a listing that's gonna take a while to sell, I might add 3 months. And then of course by the second or third month, it doesn't have something every day, but it would have something 3 times a week or whatever it is, right? So it's just graphically an interesting way to present it. And for me, it tells me exactly what it is I'm gonna be doing when. So it's also my to-do list. It's just kind of convenient when I do it this way. So just thought I'd share that layout. Great. So yeah, you just keep marketing, right? And so back to our list. The next one is a tenant list. The tenant list, and by the way, this is old. This is old, so it doesn't have like Facebook ads and stuff like that in it, because this is, I forget when I pulled this. This is like from 2014 or 2015 or something, just as a sample. It's the one I have. Anyway, now we're back to the third page on our deck, and here is a tenant list. And this is what it is I need to talk to the tenant about. So when I take over a tenant for a listing, I'm going to have a meeting with that tenant. I'm going to talk to the seller about having the meeting with the tenant, right? And now I'm going to meet with that tenant and have a conversation, because they're not happy. They're not happy. So I need to make relations with them. And I need to go, look, I understand this is, I'm sorry that the house is going on the market or the unit or whatever. And you'll find out, what are your plans? And they go, well, do I have to get out in 30 days or something? And I go, no, whatever the seller has decided. But in most cases, they want to keep the tenant, right? Because they want to keep the revenue coming in. So we say, no, and here's how this works. When we get an offer and we accept an offer and we allow a buyer to do a home inspection. And when that home inspection is done, at that point, the buyer says, yes, I'm going to go ahead and buy this property. At that point, you'll be given notice, and you'll be given 45 days notice, because that's what the law requires. So that's what I explain to people, right? I also talk to them, so the moment it hits the market, it does mean that we're going to be showing the property. So let's talk about how we do showings. are you, is it okay with you if I give you 24-hour notice, right? Now, they don't have this, they don't see the 48-hour. And some people say, well, the law allows me 48 hours, and I say, you're absolutely right. If you need 48 hours, we'll work with 48 hours. It would be a lot easier on everybody if I could have 24 hours with you. And they go, well, all right, you can call me, but I might not be able to show it within 24 hours. I said, great, if you just allow me to give you a call, make the appointment with you, and let's see how it goes. And then we'll set the date accordingly. It's challenging that way because now somebody calls you for a showing for tomorrow afternoon, and you call up and she says no, right? She already says no, I can't show it till the next day. I won't be able to clean or do whatever. And now so what does your MLS listing say? Because that's what people are gonna go by. So sometimes you can just qualify and say it takes 48 hours, and then you can say in your realtor remarks, may be able to show in 24 hours, but tenant may also require 48. So I might qualify it, right, to let people know that this tenant, right. Now what I'm also gonna tell the tenant when they do that is I'm gonna say, look, here's the thing. We have no way of knowing whether an investor is gonna buy this property or whether somebody wants to buy it to occupy it. In this market, there's actually a 50-50 chance of an investor buying it versus, a homeowner wanting to move in. So your cooperation with the seller is going to get communicated to the buyer. The buyer is going to ask about you, and the more I can talk to the buyer about how cooperative you are and how helpful you are, the more the buyer is going to say, oh, good tenant. Right? So I'm just sharing with you that I'm going to have to talk to the buyer about your and my relationships. So if you want to stay here and you want to, at least if it's being bought by an investor, have a good chance of being the one to stay, I'm just letting you know that your approach to this whole thing helps determine that buyers want to continue to have you on the property. So. And that kind of, they go like, oh, really? Oh, like they hadn't thought of that. They're just mad for themselves, right? And now I've told them, no, you're not being given notice. You don't, because they think the appointment with me means I'm going to give them notice. That's not right. I just told you that there's more time involved and whatnot, and I'll let you know when we open escrow, and that we'll have 10 days or 2 weeks for an inspection period. And then I explained to them that they have to let the inspector in, right? All of these things. So it's a lot to talk about a tenant. We also need permission from the tenant to take pictures, right? Can we use these pictures? Because the pictures are going to show some of your personal items like your furniture. Is it okay with you that those appear on the MLS? No. Okay, then what do you do, right? So again, it would help a lot if we could. If I could take some pictures that show very little of your personal items, would that be okay? Well, how about I see them? So you see where I'm going, right? They get, it's the gamut. You run the gamut as to cooperation and no cooperation. So the last one I had was that house in Kahului. She was devastated. She had 3 kids, and she was like, what am I gonna do? Where am I gonna move and whatnot? And I totally calmed her down. She totally got it that she had time, that I would give her time and give her the 45 days and whatnot. And when we gave her, oh, jeez. And when she got notice and actually started looking, she found a far nicer place to live. She was ecstatic. However, when I first approached her, she had just bought a truck 2 weeks prior, right? A Tacoma giant thing sitting in the driveway that a brand new Tacoma costs between $40,000 and $50,000. I was gonna call it a mortgage. The car payment on that is huge, right? So she was devastated. She said, I just bought a truck. I thought I was secure here. I had, blah, blah. So, and the landlords, a lot of landlords leave that to us. So I'm just sharing with you, it's really good to have a tenant list. I also get them to talk about what's your rent here, Like, I'll bring a estoppel certificate and get them to agree to what do you think is the security deposit that you have with the landlord, and what is your rent? I just need that confirmed, and I might get that right up front, just so I have it. It's called an estoppel certificate. It's just a piece of paper that says, I, the tenant, fill in the blank name, am owed the following security deposit, or have the following security deposit with the landlord, blank amount, and I pay monthly rent of blank. That's it, and they sign it. That's all it is. Okay, so that gives you an idea here of something that you may not or may not even have thought about. And it's really handy to have a list, and you'll modify it along the way. The next 3 pages are...
Oh, in your listing booklet, if you have a tenant, would you want to put a copy of the tenant's lease to prove what they pay in their deposit and their terms?
Well, see, the lease is 3 years old and might not be accurate.
Okay.
So if the tenant is on a month-to-month, I'm not going to provide, do I want to put that in there? No, because I think that would make the tenant feel awkward. Because the tenant's going to look in there, right? He's going to go, what's my lease doing in here?
Okay.
So I might not. If I had a vacant main house and a tenant in the Ohana, I might, or I might at least put a page on here are the terms of the lease, something like that. So the next portion is from the locker room. This is one of the market centers in the locker room shared this. The Jacksonville Beach Market Center has this list. And it's a combination of our transaction checklist as well as a to-do list for a listing. So I just share this with you. It's the same thing, right? Pre-listing packet delivered, seller to provide an AOA doc, seller to provide 2 keys, seller to there you go, keys. I didn't even talk about keys in my listing list, right? So it's just a great list. Pull it out, pull the portions out that you want to make for yourself, right?
Like 2 keys to you?
Yeah. Yeah, so what do you do with keys? Do you have a electronic lockbox that you're going to put the property on electronic lockbox? Do you have a plain old-fashioned lockbox? Do you want to just carry keys around? There's 2 of you, so you're going to need 2 keys, right? I like to use lockboxes, and whether or not I show the property, I'm going to use my electronic lockbox, because the electronic lockbox, when I open it, I've got it set to send out an email saying, thanks so much for showing my property. Won't you please take a moment to answer this questionnaire? And there's like 6 or 8 questions. Well, all I have to do is when I get it is forward it to you, because you're the one who brought the buyer. So I just forward it to you and say, thanks so much for showing the property. Won't you please answer this questionnaire? And then I get answers, and they come in, it comes in a report that's pie charts. And so it says, 60% of the people who viewed this property thought the price was too high.
How do you connect it with your central lock like that?
Central Lock does that.
Oh.
So, but you have to go in and set it.
Okay.
And so I haven't been in Central Lock in a while. It was kind of challenging the first time I went in, but you just go in there and browse.
Center, ER? Century.
Central. So if you've done your RAM orientation, they told you about Central Lock lockboxes. You haven't done your, oh, that's right, we postponed your orientation. So you're gonna get this at your orientation, and they're gonna give you a number, and you must put that number into your phone, because that's the number you need to open other people's lockboxes. Anyway, I found this a really useful list to use to expand on the list that I'd already started. So I just shared that with you. Take advantage of lists. Always take a look at lists like, what are other people doing? What are other people reminding themselves of, right? And what is my system for taking a listing, so that I know what to do, and I know what to talk about, and I know what to remember to, yeah, good idea. The last 3 pages or 4 pages are what is called this 3-step seller escrow process. And it is a handout from a class that I teach at Graham called A Real Estate Licensee's Responsibilities During Escrow. And what I recommend in that class is that you stay in communication with your clients. Let's keep going. And so here's how this works. When you are start getting offers, or you've gotten an offer in and you now want to tell your client kind of an overview. If we go into escrow, this is what's going to happen, and this is your overview page. And then you could literally be negotiating for a week, or God knows, take other offers, and finally you decide to take an offer and you're going to open escrow. And now you might want to sit down with them and review phase one in detail, because phase one is intense, right? One of the benefits of doing this is having a conversation with your seller about the fact that chances are the buyer is going to request some sort of repairs. It's just going to happen. So let's just, oh no, I'm asking for an as-is addendum. Let me just warn you up front that even with an as-is addendum, some buyers may ask for repairs. So we don't need to worry about that right now. I just want you to be aware that some buyers ask for repairs, and many sellers will consider them and do some. What you decide to do, we can decide later. I just wanted to give you a heads up about that. Okay, well, I'm not going to do any repairs. Okay, fine, that's great. But when 2 weeks later come by, he's now been warned, right? And I said, remember I told you we were going to get a request for repairs? Well, they're requesting 3 repairs. What? But he's so much calmer than blowing up on me 2 weeks later, right? So it's a really valuable process to let people know. I also have this for the buyer. The idea is people don't know what's going to happen in escrow. They have no idea. It's like a black hole. It's kind of like what it's like to you right now. Like, I'm supposed to manage an escrow. To me, it felt like a big black hole. What is this thing called escrow, right? Well, this is not only what will help you talk to your sellers about what's going to happen in escrow, it's also your job description. This is it right here. So just take a look at it that way, right? Once you open escrow, what I chose to do was divide the process into kind of 3 phases. There's the first 2 weeks when all these inspections are due, and the seller's disclosure is due, and the buyer's hiring a home inspector, and maybe the cesspool is investigated, and blah, 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 all this stuff happens, right? And then it kind of calms down, and now the lender is doing their work. The lender needs some extra time to secure the loan. And then towards the end, when conditional loan approval is given, there's usually 8 days or 10 days left here where things suddenly speed up again. And you're going to need to do a final walkthrough and make sure that, of course, you've delivered the termite inspection and a survey or whatever. But there now could be encroachments, but mostly the final walkthrough. At final walkthrough, I can tell you, people have like problems. It's not cleaned enough. The yard isn't kept the way that it should have. You didn't make the repairs that you promised to make. Final walkthrough days are challenging. Everybody's a little on edge. So I just warn people about these 3 phases and tell them up front what to expect. And it really helps. It just really makes people feel like, oh, okay, I get it, all right, I'm ready.
And did you just say you tell them about these phases as they're approaching? You don't go through 1, 2, and 3
I
at
go
the same
through
time?
1, 2, and 3 as an overview, like when we're,
Okay, and then you do it, so then you're having.
and then I meet with them, right, then
Okay.
and I use these, and the second one is shorter, and I might just do that over the phone. I do a lot of touching my clients. I go to see them if they're here. I use these opportunities to build my relationship, and the more that my clients feel comfortable with the process, the more they're grateful to me for letting them know what's going on. They feel communicated with, right? Yeah. All right, so that's kind of a quick and dirty on listings, and you've got some tools there to help build your own lists and get yourself prepared to take a listing. Yeah, of course.
How do you handle this, I guess it's a newer thing where the owner would have to be out of the house and final walkthrough done 6 days before closing? Is this, it seems like
So
this
we
could be
usually do
challenging.
6 and 5, so 6 days is when cleaning and removal of items are due, and
Mhm.
5 is, and I tend to move those. Our templates were created by committee, so I had this committee of all the brokers, and we all reviewed the entire contract and agreed on what was to be there. And people felt more comfortable with the 6 and 5 scenario. I prefer 5 and 4, just because asking a buyer to get out of the house 7 days, a seller to get out of the house 7 days before closing is a lot.
That's what I think.
Keep in mind, the seller doesn't have to get out unless your contract specifies that the house is to be vacant at final walkthrough. Empty of all personal items. Nothing in the contract requires the seller to be out. Be aware of that.
But all their stuff to be out.
Doesn't say that. Does not say that.
Okay.
So if you want a house to be empty, if you want to guarantee that a house is vacant and empty, you need to put that in Q. And we actually have in the clause editor, we actually have a clause to that effect.
Okay,
So-
so all of that is negotiable or
Absolutely.
changeable. It's not law or something. Okay.
So we're going to cover that on Friday, because that's in the purchase contract, right? Yeah. So today, we are going to talk about actually preparing a listing agreement for going to our listing presentation, right? Because you want to bring a filled out and completed listing contract. So we are going to go to our Clarity dashboard to log into Zipforms. Okay, and I'm going to go to Zipforms. But hopefully by the time we get back. You guys are probably way in there already. I've got a slow computer over here, so, okay.